ISPS is an initiative that ISA and PSA started in 2016. And the mission is to inspire Stanford Iranian community, help them build lasting connections, grow to their full potential as beacons of hope and impactful citizens of the world. But more recently, we've expanded our gatherings to include a broader community. We are very excited about hosting our event online this year for the second time in a row. This gives us the opportunity to connect with many of you who are not living in California. Next slide. We've all been living with a lot of uncertainty, and this is something that we are slowly learning to live with. So in today's event, we plan to have very interesting conversations about how to thrive through uncertainty with a focus on sustainability. Climate change is a global phenomenon that reminds all of us how we're all interconnected. And regardless of where we live and how we live, we are all sharing this planet. In fact, climate change is the biggest existential risk we are facing as humans. But also, it's an opportunity for all of us to come together and envision a very different future. I hope you will enjoy our program today, learn something new, and most importantly, connect to other inspiring people in our community and join forces in changing our world for the better. Next slide, please. So this is the agenda for today's meeting. The event will be around 2 hours today. And we're going to start with a panel discussion after the opening remarks are over, which is going to be short. The panel discussion, in the panel discussion, we're going to have two amazing speakers, Nusha Ajami and Amir Olakuchak, who will talk about what we can do about drought and climate change. After that, we're going to have a short Q&A with the panel, and then we'll have Launchpad, where we showcase 5 impactful initiatives and startups who are solving very important problems in our world. You will have a chance to connect to the Launchpad presenters later in the breakout rooms if you want to support them in any way. Also, you can vote for your favorite pitch, which will receive the ISPS Recognition Award. At the end, we will have topic-based breakout rooms, and in each of the breakout rooms, we will have one of the panel speakers or the Launchpad presenters, and you can join that room that you're most interested in and ask more questions and continue to network and converse further. So without further ado, let's start the conversation with Nusha and Amir.
Thank you, Arzujan. Thank you for the introduction and opening this event. This is not our world with trees in it. This is the world of trees and humans have just arrived. This is one of my favorite quotes from the book Overstory, written by Richard Powers, who got Pulitzer Awards. Welcome, salam be hamegi. For our 5th anniversary of ISPS, we decided to turn our lenses towards environment. Like many of you, I have come across news, documentary, and articles describing the uncertainty we are facing in the future in regards with climate change. And water is at the heart of this conversation. Water is so ingrained in our life that if it goes out of balance, so do humans' lives with it. If we understand the problem, if we seek the opportunities and take actions, we can navigate our way through the uncertainty to the future. And before I introduce our outstanding speakers with us today, I would like to hear from you. I would like to ask a quick question that you can interact with us through chat. Please type a number from 1 to 5, 1 indicating very little information and 5 indicating expert knowledge. And answer this question for me. How much do you know about the water scarcity impacts on your living area? I'll give you a couple of seconds to type in your answer. Okay. I am. Maybe a couple of more seconds. and my friends can tell me how much. Okay, I can see it here. I see a lot of 2 and 3, which tells us, like, regardless where we're coming from, because we are actually connecting from different parts of the world, and then the background that we are at, we understand there is a concern about climate, there's a concern about environment and water scarcity, and we want to learn more. So I'll tell you, I have good news. Sit tight, because today we have 2 amazing guides to help us to build the blueprint of understanding this problem. I'd like to introduce Nusha Ajami, one of our amazing speakers. She is the Director of Urban Water Policy at Stanford. How are you, Nusha? Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and lovely to be here.
Absolutely. And our next amazing speaker is Amir Olakuchak. He is a professor of civil and environmental engineering and earth system science at the University of California, Irvine. Hi, Amir. Good to have you here.
Hi, everyone. Thrilled to be here with you.
Amazing, amazing. So to give you a roadmap of the rest of the talk, there are going to be 3 sections. In the first section, we're going to define the problem. Essentially, we want to answer this question: what constitutes a drought, and why do we need to talk about it? In the second part, we're going to seek opportunities. We're going to identify the opportunities. And then we want to answer what has been done so far and what lies in the future. And at the third part, we want to talk about the power we share to change the future. What is our responsibility, and what is the role of policy, technology, science, and community in facing climate change? We hope at the end of this talk, you leave with a bit more knowledge in hand and you feel inspired to take actions, and you pass this inspiration to other members of your community. I want to add one last thing before I start the conversation. You can connect with us. You can stay connected with us through the chat and submit your questions, because at the end, we're going to dedicate 10 to 15 minutes to your questions. So without further ado, let's start this conversation. Well, Amir and Nusha, I have a question for both of you. Would you please introduce yourself briefly and talk about one of the recent or ongoing environmental related projects that you're working on and how it makes you inspired? You can start, Amir.
Sure. So Amir Olakuchak, دانشگاه کالیفرنیا در ایرواین. من هیدرولوژیست کارم. Oh, sorry. This is
in English.
In English, right?
Yeah.
Amir Olakuchak, University of California, Irvine. I'm really happy to be here with you. I'm a hydrologist by training. I work on natural hazards related to water, like droughts, heat waves, and other cascading hazards and wildfires. And one of my recent projects focuses on compound and cascading hazards. Compound hazard means events that interact with each other. For example, droughts and heat waves, we know they interact with each other, and they can cause some other events like wildfires, like floods even, debris flow events, processes associated with rainfall over burned areas, and hazards that come with it. So that's one of my exciting projects. And more recently, we are looking into environmental justice issues associated with these environmental hazards, how different communities respond, rich versus poor, or different races, or different, how your skin color matters when it comes to hazards and impacts. And we work with social scientists and even psychologists on impacts of hazards.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you for sharing your bio. Nusha, I will give it to you.
Sure. So I'm Nusha Ajami. As Yossi said, I direct the Urban Water Policy Program at Stanford. I am also a hydrologist by training, but I have had a little bit of a different journey. I have worked for the legislature, have done work in policy and decision-making process. I was the governor's appointee to the Bay Area's Water Resources Control Board, and then recently was appointed to San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. I'm very, very interested in the intersection of hydrology and water resources and how policies and human decisions are impacting our environment and the way we manage our systems. One of the exciting projects that we are working on is how what's the role of cities in addressing sustainability in the long term, and how the cities and communities need to look like, or what do they need to do to become much more resilient in the face of climate change and droughts and wildfires and other hazards that they're facing. And we also focus a lot on how you can change demand and how people use water, and how they should be considering rethinking the way they use and consume water in different communities.
Thank you. I think, perfect. I think someone by mistake shared it. Thank you for sharing. What I hear from both your answers is we are all connected. It's a multidimensional problem. It's multidimensional question, and we need different expertise from all around the world, from different backgrounds to come in and talk. That's fantastic. We have Amir from academia who's doing projects and trying to help with the science and technology, and you have you and Nusha, which you're also coming from academia background, but you maybe shifted your lenses more towards policy and regulation and how government or people with more power in hand can help with the changes. So I'd like to ask a very simple fundamental question to make sure everyone in the audience have the same understanding. Nusha, can you tell us what constitutes a drought?
Sure. So look, droughts are nothing new. We have been experiencing droughts over decades and centuries and thousands of years. And I think Amir can speak to that even better than me. And just to give you a perspective, in California, in the past 100 years, more than 50 of those years have been the sort of indicates to be below normal, dry, extremely dry years, which means that it's not a very rare phenomenon. However, what we are experiencing right now, at least in the past 20 years, is a much more frequent and hotter droughts that are sort of challenging the way our system works and the way our infrastructure functions. I'm happy to go into how our water system is built, but I know that's maybe something that's coming next.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, I like to shift a little bit. Ask Amir. You mentioned two words. It's frequent and it's hotter. So it to me means that it's anomaly. It's something out of ordinary that we haven't seen before. But is it really so? Why do we call it a crisis? Didn't we have it in the past era? Like, why do we need to worry about it now? And why do we need to make actions?
So I agree with everything Nusha said. If you look at the data, just to be more quantitative, if your audience is interested, if you look at droughts in Southern California or Southwestern US in general, our climate has warmed on average around less than 1 degree, 1 Celsius degree. But if you look at droughts have warmed twice faster than the average climate. So it's a significant amount. It means our recent droughts are much hotter than droughts maybe 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Why this matters, we know drought and heat waves and high temperatures, they interact with each other. I can go into details if your audience is interested. Earth, like our body, needs to cool down at some point. And the process is basically dominated by evaporation. Like our bodies, we lose water through the process of sweating, and that's how our bodies regulate the temperatures, right? Earth works the same. Through the process of evaporation from soil, the surface of the earth cools down, and Earth gets a moment of relief. But then there is drought and temperature is high, water evaporates fast, and there is no more water anymore. There is no cooling process. The surface gets warmer and warmer, the atmosphere gets warmer, then there's higher chance of heat waves, and we know heat waves kill people and wildlife. So that's why this additional temperature increase matters and has significant societal impact.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Nusha, do you want to add to it? Because you mentioned something to talking about drought and then the identification of it.
Yeah, basically what I wanted to add here is, the water system, we also depend. I think Amir's point on evaporation is extremely important because, and another topic is sublimation, which is, snow melting and disappearing and actually directly evaporating, which is definitely impacting our system. And maybe I put that in a different perspective because heat waves are extremely important for people. However, if you think about water as an indicator, our water system is dependent on, has built based on a stationarity, meaning that the climate and it's going to repeat itself and we all going to get certain amount of snow, and that snow will, and then we have reservoirs that collects that water, and eventually snow as a natural reservoir would melt during the late springtime, and that would provide water for us for summertime. And that has worked for many years. These are like 20th century infrastructure that we have dependent on, very centralized, very concrete heavy, and very much dependent on the concept of abundance and stationarity. However, what we see right now is that with the climate change and these droughts and these frequent and the hotter droughts, that whole equation is sort of fallen apart because we don't get as much snow. When the snow comes, I just recently, if you live in California, we had that major storm event a couple of weeks ago. And then quickly after that, we had heat wave, which melted every drop of snow that we had on the mountains, right? That's a snow that we would be depending on in the summertime, which has already disappeared. So this system is already sort of responding to these frequent droughts and hotter droughts that are impacted by climate change. And that means our water system, our sophisticated infrastructure heavy water system is sort of failing to adjust because it's just not built for what we are experiencing right now.
That's very informative. Thank you for sharing. Then you, Amir and Anusha, you both mentioned California multiple times. I'd like to widen our scope a little bit. Can you talk about maybe Iran? What are the similarities with what you see here and what people are experiencing in Iran?
Amir, you should go first.
Okay. As you all know, we have kind of similar climate in California, Iran. In California, we have diversity of climates from snow-dominated regions to really hot and dry. In Iran, is more or less the same. We have, of course, areas that are colder, drier, hotter, but in general, we have similar climate. And everything we said about California also applies to Iran, including issues about snow melt, and heat wave interaction with droughts. But another issue that both areas have in common, California and Iran, is significant development over the years, and particularly without attention to resources. In the past years, we have been advocating this issue of anthropogenic drought. That means droughts that are caused or intensified by human activities. And that's, again, another thing that both Iran and California share. We have similar challenges related to groundwater. In Central California and almost everywhere in Iran, groundwater levels are dropping at alarming rate, especially in Iran. This issue is a lot more severe than California, and the consequences can be lasting and significant for generations.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would add to Amir's comment is, Iran is a lot of the infrastructure that we have in Iran has been in place over the past, put in place in the 20th century. And we actually have continued on the same path. So this model of, again, I'm keep repeating, the centralized, concrete heavy, abundance sort of driven behavior has continued on. So you see that in the past, 20, 30 years, we have built number of dams. We have, this whole concept of this connection between land use and water use, which means uncontrolled development and not thinking about the consequences of that, has led into impacts on our lakes and rivers. Like Urumia is a great example of that, which is sort of driven by some of the water management activities upstream to that lake, which impacted the inflow to the lake. So as what we experienced in southern Iran because of the dams, Karun dams, which have stopped the flow of the river, but also it's basically we are not able to manage it properly, so it's causing problems. And one very important thing, which is sort of common between California and Iran, is that these dams, while they used to be an insurance for us to provide us water for a long period, now actually becoming a problem because they are not, doesn't matter how big your dam is or how tall it is, if there is no water that can be gathered behind the dam, it does not matter. And that's what we are actually experiencing right now, both in California and Iran. And I think the groundwater piece is actually, which Amir mentioned, is extremely important. In California, for example, we have had about 14 foot of subsidence, which is, the ground sort of collapsing because of the amount of groundwater we are using. And the same thing that's happening in Iran, I think it's the same experience. And that again goes back to land use, water use, and the fact that people, when they can't get water from the surface water, for example, the rivers, the lakes, they actually switch in pumping groundwater. And groundwater does not get recharged with this at the same rate and with the same speed. So then you're basically, it's similar to your saving account. So if you're taking out more money than you're putting in, eventually you're gonna, run out of money. So, and I think these are some similarities there.
So if I want to summarize, the diversity of climate in California and Iran is very similar. We have different seasons coming in, but we have three issues with both of the locations. We have the issue with centralized water systems. And then that hasn't been really upgraded as other technologies have been upgraded. And then we have the issue for non-careful development of people like life, city, or even farming. And then this is very interesting because we often forget the similarities that exist in large scale environmental related issues like water. So both of you mentioned some examples of the things that have done in the past, but is not working at the moment. I'm wondering, can you give us a little bit light in the future? Can you tell us about the things or the ways that have been neglected, the solutions that have been neglected, or the perspectives that have been neglected can help with the water scarcity problem in Iran and also California?
I can go first. Maybe just stepping back for 1 second and talking about development, because I think it's a topic that's very important. The topic of development is not like we should not develop or we should not grow as a community. It's about making sure that you're mindful growth, meaning that you don't want to disconnect people from their resources. You want them to everyday think where their water is coming from, where it's going. For many generations, farming was very much of a water-driven activity, meaning that if you wanted to have a farm to maintain for generations, you had to make sure you do sustainable practices. And now we are sort of what we see it's in California especially, and I think in Iran too, is just this disconnect, a generational thing. I'll do it, I make money, I'll survive. Who cares what happens next? And we see that in California a lot because of the, people who are now involved in almond farming, which, it's all about I go and develop that land. So it's that disconnect is definitely not sustainable in the long run. I think one movement that I'm going to mention here is this conversation around nature-based solutions and connecting basically drop of water from the beginning to the end, meaning that you have to think about water not in silos, not water that we use for drinking and water that goes down the wastewater treatment plant and water that just rains and we have to get rid of it as fast, but actually think about it as one single drop that we have to value all along. And, nature-based solutions or green infrastructure, which are different ways of, instead of trying to conquer the nature, Amir and I, both engineers, these are concepts that we have learned for a long time, that engineers are there to kind of push the natural limits and try to make us overcome them. But trying to actually incorporate nature as part of our decision, as part of our design, and as part of our growth would help not only let us just, keep people at the center or in the environment at the center of growth, but actually makes people a lot more mindful. And actually it gives us an opportunity to actually take advantage of benefits that nature brings to the table, right? From recharge to treatment to cooling, there's so many different values that nature can bring to the table, while also helping us grow in a mindful way.
Yeah, I love the word nature-based solutions.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Amir? Do you want to add something?
Sure. When it comes to drought, climate change, impacts, interactions, the relationship between drought and climate change, California and Iran are very similar. But when it comes to solutions or potential solutions, I think the two environments are very different. The main reason is because of differences in structural politics and how things work. So when we talk about solutions, I don't think the priorities are the same or the same solutions would work for both. In general, obviously, what Nusha said is really important. Nature-based solution can potentially work everywhere. But given what is going on right now, it would be a lot harder in Iran relative to California, right? So when it comes to solutions, solutions have to be kind of local. Engineers or scientists don't make decisions. They propose ideas, they develop technology, or they promote them, but then policymakers are the ones that actually make decisions. That's why Nusha was smart. She went to interface of engineering and policy. So she got very close to really decision-making and changing the society. So considering that issue, we can safely say that water, including environment and energy issues, they all have a strong political dimension. And of course, the more flexible your politics, your policies, the higher is the chance of coming up with solutions that eventually work. As you know, the main issue is that Iran's politics is not very open. It is dominated by a lot of ideological issues that makes certain things a little difficult. But from that perspective, California has the advantage. So that's the main difference between the two.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are at the great spot to segue our conversation to the last 10 minutes. We defined what is drought. We give audience the information why it's a crisis, because we have more frequent, hotter environment, and then why it is a problem, because it connects a lot of things together. We need to think about snow, we need to think about heat waves, we need to think about the development of peoples in cities and also the agriculture. We touched upon the similarities between California and Iran, which seems it was very interesting part for me, as I heard from two amazing experts that they are facing the same issue. And then even infrastructures are more or less in the same category. There are centralized water systems, for example, dams, or they're using pumps to get water out of from under the ground and use it, not knowing that it's not going to replace as fast as other stuff. And then we mentioned about the two different approach, and Amir made a very great point, is that policies and political structure is at the center of solution for this problem. And Nusha mentioned something amazing, that nature-based solution. We pay attention to nature and then try to learn from it and stay with it to be sustainable. So the last 10 minutes, or like 8 minutes, I think we have left, I'd like to go back to the solutions that both of you mentioned, right? I'd like to ask to make an example for the audience, to make it more tangible, what sort of decisions you make at this moment with the power and authority and knowledge that you have in advancing the solutions that you mentioned. I want to start with Nusha. You mentioned nature-based solution, and then you are head of water urban policy. I'm wondering, what is type of projects or decision-making process that you have to advance it?
One thing I want to say before I dive into that is, policy and politics are absolutely, Amir is absolutely correct, is at the heart of everything. But always remember, even in California, it's like a moving train. Everybody is prepared and comfortable in whatever they're doing. Sort of trying to change the direction that train is moving, regardless of where you are, it's quite difficult, even in California. For example, in San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, we have all these projects already lined up, and they're very engineered, sort of centralized, system heavy, just because that's what we know how to do best. And that is how we know to move forward. And it is not easy to change path. It's easy to say we should do it. It's not as easy to do it in action. So one thing I want to mention is that's quite important in this process. Think about a moving train and how you want to change lanes as you are as the train is moving with the speed of light. I would say, for trying to think about the solutions and how they can be put in place. For example, it's communication, trying to understand, trying to kind of engage public and individuals in this process is extremely important. Change is happening, but it's, again, as I said, it's a slow. I think what Amir mentioned is absolutely very, very important, which is I always tell people, we have all the technological solution we can imagine. This is not a matter of technology. It's a matter of management and governance that needs to change. For example, how can we rethink the way we make investments? How can we rethink the way we incorporate these new solutions into our old solutions? And just to give you one tangible solution, for example, in California, in our homes, we use water for so many different purposes. Very little amount of that water needs to be high quality, drinkable quality water. The rest of it can be whatever, because, for example, drinkable water quality should not be flushed down the toilet or should not be used to water your lawns. But that's what we're doing. That's our centralized system dictates to do. Now, in San Francisco, now we have this rule that every building that's larger than 100,000 square feet or more has to take the water from their shower, from their sink, from their foundation water, treat it, and then you can use that water to flush down toilet or use it for outdoor spaces. There is another movement that's looking into how you can how you can sort of have homes that use only 50 liter, which is quite like a quarter of the amount right now we are using in our homes, which is all focused on how you can use and reuse water within a building. That's just, I know it's not a nature-based solution, but in a way it is, because you are actually learning from nature. Water cycle is all about recycling in the process. And what we are doing, we are shrinking the time and space this recycling is happening. And that means that then you don't need to take as much out of the environment, because you are actually creating the circular economy around water within a city or within a community. And these solutions can be applied in large cities, small cities. We just need to have the guts to kind of make that change happen. And some cities have started that process already.
Before I let Amir to go on with his answer, I'd like to ask a quick question from you, Shao. What about the Stanford? Does the Stanford do that? Do they use water, reuse water?
Stanford is not doing that. However, in all the new buildings that you go, it does say in the toilets they're using gray water. The reality is that's not what's happening at Stanford, which is quite disappointing.
Maybe we can push the university. Maybe we can do that.
Maybe that sounds good. We should definitely do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, go on, Amir.
Another example related to groundwater, in some places, including big cities in California, now they are recycling wastewater in a way that it can be even, you can directly even drink what comes out of these treatment processes. And they inject it to groundwater aquifers for different purposes, including drinking water. They extract it at a later time. And, in our area here, they inject around 200,000 gallons per day, if I remember correctly. That's huge. And if you look at the situation right now, we are in the middle of a historic drought in California, right? It's really extreme. But in Southern California, in our area, at least the groundwater levels are actually doing pretty well, surprisingly well, because of a solution that was promoted by multiple communities and eventually built, and now we are seeing the impact at local scale. And our campus, UC Irvine, uses gray water significantly because the facility is right next to us. And also almost all cities in our area use gray water and also treated wastewater for irrigation purposes and a lot of other outdoor use. And we're seeing this technology in big cities, not only in the US, but other countries like Singapore and others. This can be done in all big cities relatively easily. It's only a matter of investment. But most cities around the world don't have this technology. Not that they don't have money for it, but maybe it's not on their radar, maybe it's not being promoted well. And one biggest change related to what Nusha mentioned, if you look at the past 20 years or so, we see a lot more grassroots activities, a lot more activism in climate change, water issues, environmental issues. And that gives me and a lot of other people hope to see hopefully a better future.
Yeah, absolutely. Amir, you highlighted one important thing is that even though science, technology, and policy are important, but at the heart of it is the community who will push to change the direction of the train that Nusha mentioned. So from your conversations, I realized we do have a power as an individual. I do have a power to go and tell Stanford, this is not okay. If you want to be a pioneer, you should be pioneer in every aspect and in every front. No, we have 2 minutes left. I have one question, like a small question you can answer it in 30 seconds or something. I'd like you provide an audience with some of the sources that you think they're going to help, connect with this problem, connect with the solution that you mentioned in a better way. You can talk about a book, you can talk about a podcast, or maybe you have some conferences, seminars coming up, and you feel like it's going to be interesting for the audience to join and learn more about this topic. I'll be happy to hear any thoughts.
Yeah, I'm happy to go. I think everybody should read Cadillac Desert, which is what created, which is an interesting perspective on how the Western US was developed and sort of grew. And my very good friend, David Sedlak, has a book called Water 4.0, which I've told David he doesn't include Iran and the sort of the qanats and all the movements in the water system there. But however, he sort of talks about how water infrastructure has gone through 4 different steps, 4 different stages or eras. And I think it's worth taking a look at.
Amazing. So what's the name again? Water
4.0.
Okay. Thank you, Amir.
I agree. Cadillac Desert is a must read for everyone, even those who are not in this field. Unfortunately, there is no Farsi translation as far as I know, but and also not for the Water 4.0. But I hope someone does that at some point.
What is the name of the book again? Sorry.
Cadillac Desert.
Cadillac Desert. Okay.
Nusha also mentioned. So I'd like to encourage everyone to look into some of the successful science environmental movements in the past. And one example is what Sherwood Rowland and Mario Molina did. Many years ago, they basically were working on ozone hole and the role of CFCs. And once they figured out the science, they put a lot of time and effort in outreach. They mobilized a huge community that eventually led to, I think, 1996 Kyoto Protocol that eventually banned CFCs. And since then, ozone hole has improved significantly. It's a very nice, successful story. In fact, if you go deep into it, you see that it was not easy. They had a really hard time, even with their own colleagues in their own departments and with a bigger society and with big interests and big companies that at the time were producing CFCs. They were making billions of dollars. They fought really hard and they caused a lot of problems for them, but they pushed on and they mobilized the community. And now we have a much better world. And that's a really exciting example when it comes to climate change, water problems, environmental issues. Hopefully we can do the same in our own field. Of course, it won't be easy, but others have done it in the past, and hopefully we can do it in the future.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you so much. We are having exciting Q&A. We already have the submitted questions from the audience, but audience, you can still submit the questions until the end. I think we have around 10 minutes left. Shahab can confirm that for me. There is one interesting question, and I'd like to address it. It's about the first part of the conversation. When I ask about why it is a crisis. So someone in the audience is interested to know, why shouldn't we let Earth to fix it? You know, why should we do something about it? Or maybe I can reverse the question. What happens if we don't make any actions?
I'll go. I think, you know, Earth could have fixed it if it was a natural process that was broken. We have broken this natural process because of what we do. And we are, as much as we are part of the problem, we have to be part of the solution. And I think that is why we need to think and rethink the way we do things and the actions that we are taking and how we are managing our water systems, because it's important we will be part of this process.
About what happens, I would say the biggest issue is we don't know what will happen if we don't do anything. We have some ideas, we have some thoughts, some suggestions, but the reality is we don't know, because we may get to a situation, a condition that we have never experienced in the past. And Yusha mentioned the issue of stationarity. If we get to a point, to a situation, temperature from water perspective, or from atmospheric perspective that we have never experienced in the past, our past data then probably won't tell us what is going to happen. So your topic of this meeting, one of them is uncertainty, and that's exactly the issue here. Although we have ideas, we don't know, and that's pretty scary.
It is, absolutely. But at the same time, as an engineer, I'm super excited that something is so uncertain, because that's a point that we can really use our expertise, knowledge, and empathy to face the problem and solutions. One other on-demand question from the audience was that, can you give us some small examples or big examples of how can we take care of water in our daily basis life?
Yeah, I can go first again. I think, look, there was also a comment on water users, and I didn't mention this because we have gone through different conversations, but this centralized water system we have, it actually ignored humans and environmental impacts. Everybody has been taken out of the cycle because somebody brings the water to us, we use it, it goes done. I think we actually are, and you mentioned this, Yossi, we're trying to be in the role of communities and individual decisions. It is extremely important to remember you are empowered to change how do you do things. The way you use water in the home, while it might be insignificant, it can add up to something much bigger. You should not waste water in your home. You should not use your water to have green lawns in your backyard, regardless of where you live. If you are in a dry and arid areas, the less we do pollution, the more water we have. We didn't talk about water quality, which is a very, very important part of this equation. As we pollute water, it becomes unavailable to next generation or next user that comes into play. So we actually have a lot of power to change things, and we have to be part of this process. Think about how and where your water is coming from, and think about where it's going, because that can impact the way you decide about your consumption patterns and how you do things. And one last thing I would say is we don't think about water when we do other things. We just think about water as a droplet. But think about the fact that every food that you eat has water in it. Every clothes that you wear has water in it. Every product that you use has a water footprint. So the less you waste food, the more you save water. The less you buy clothes and throw them away, the less you impact the water cycle. So it's kind of like, it is actually, water is entwined with everything we do on a daily basis. And you have to remember that at everything, at every stage of your life.
Thank you.
Was your question about individual?
Yes, contribution.
Because I got disconnected for a second.
Yes,
Okay.
so maybe Anusha mentioned very interesting things about how we approach water and how we should not pollute the water to begin with as much as we can. So the question was, how can we incorporate this mindfulness in the use of water in our daily life?
Yeah, I think the first and most important thing, in my opinion, is to talk about it. And at every level, not in conferences or science meeting, at individual levels, over dinner conversations, in our communities, our schools. And I think that's always a good starting point. And some of our well-known climate scientists and activists also think the same for climate change. They say, first, we need to talk about it at different levels, and hopefully with more awareness, things will slowly change. The same applies to water, environmental problems, pollutions, and other issues. And again, that's where I think we have done some progress, at least. Like if you compare now with 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we see a lot more grassroots activities, a lot more community engagement, but still we have to do a lot more to bring communities involved. When it comes to communities, now we see communities that are more influential or more involved are the ones that have more power, they have more resources. Still, disadvantaged communities, poor communities, those are completely disconnected from discussions, from decision-making. So that's where we need to put effort to bring, when we talk about community engagement, it's not just rich, powerful communities that have a voice, or they want to be involved for certain reasons, but everyone in our society. The biggest gap is now on the environmental justice issue, that some people are completely excluded, some others are heavily involved.
Absolutely. Thank you. We have one last question and 2 minutes left, which has been asked by many people. So it actually goes back to the solution both of you talked about from two different perspectives. The question is, how can you move research and academic work to real life? And how can you bring people to the decision-making table?
That's for me.
I'll go. So look, I think just as part of my journey, when I was doing my master's at the University of Arizona, one of the classes I took was water policy. And that water policy class changed the trajectory of my career. Because I learned very quickly that unless you really know how the laws and the sort of regulations are set, you can't really change things. You can do all sort of engineering, but that doesn't mean anything. It can eventually, but it just doesn't, if you want to maintain impact, you have to connect the two. And for me, it's all about every research that we do, at least in my team, it always starts from the question that's identified by the society. We always have an underground partner. We always identify what their problems are. And then I go back and then think about how I can turn that societal question and translate it into a very scientific question that a PhD student can answer. And then basically, then hopefully that process would have a feedback loop into the society, and that partner would be involved in that whole process as it goes. And another thing I would say is, look, as a researcher, I have devoted a lot of my personal time, mostly on a voluntary basis, to sit at the regulatory chair, to work on, give time to volunteer my time for anything that I can do to be able to impact the process. And it is a lot of time, I tell you this much, but it is definitely fulfilling when you can see that you can make a difference.
Absolutely.
Most of my career, I crunched numbers. I worked with satellite data top down, worked on equations and models. And after a while, I realized basically without adding a strong human dimension, without adding a strong societal dimension to what I do, eventually all that is kind of irrelevant. And slowly, more and more, I got involved with working with social scientists and people with a strong background in policy and governance to basically translate some of our work into basically something understandable, useful for the society. And again, Nusha has done much better than me in this area by being directly involved with legislators and politicians. I'm not as far as her. My work is still in kind of academic form, but I'm learning from her.
Absolutely, thank you. I know that we just scratched the surface of this problem. I hope that the people in the audience have a little bit more knowledge about this multidimensional challenge that we're facing. I use multidimensional a lot because I want to include everyone. I want to include anyone, anywhere in the world with any background, much needed. It's not one person's job. It's not a government job. It's the community-based job. And that's what I hear from you. I recently read a book about what is power. And it says power is not about authority and it's not inherited. It's about how much impact you have on the people around you. And the more impact you have, the more powerful you are, no matter what the title. So I absolutely connected that with what you just answered to the question. It's absolutely true. I want to thank Amir and Nusha one more time. For me, I learned a lot. It was an amazing conversation. I'll definitely go and check out those two books. And Arzu also put the names on the chat, Cadillac Desert and Water 4.0. And before passing to our amazing Bita for the next section, I want to close it with another quote from one of the astronauts from Apollo mission. And then he said, "Now I know why I'm here, not for a closer look at the moon, but to look back at our home, the Earth." Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, audience.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Good morning. Good morning to our dear guests in the US and good evening to our friends back in Iran. My name is Bita Nazanfar and I'm one of ISPS board members this year. I would like to welcome you to the third ISPS Launchpad event. At ISPS Launchpad, our vision is to bring to light and support initiatives that create communities that lead to positive impact on the society and environment. This year, we have had a large number of applicants, and the panel of judges from ISPS carefully reviewed the proposals and chose 5 exciting ideas for today's presentation. In this session, we'll hear 2 nonprofit pitches, 1 community initiative, and 2 for-profit. This year, we are excited to have 3 presentations from Iran and 2 from the US. Each pitch presentation will be 5 minutes. After all presentations are done, we'll have a question and answer session in which presenters will be available to answer your questions. So similar to the panel, as you listen to the pitches, be sure to send us your questions. You can send your questions via your Zoom chat box. Another exciting part of the Launchpad is what's known as the Audience Choice Award. The pitch with the highest number of votes from the audience, that means you, receives an award from ISPS. After the Q&A session, you will receive a prompt on your screen that allows you to vote for your favorite pitch. We'll count all votes and announce the winning pitch at the end of the event. Now, allow me to briefly introduce our presenters of the day. Mr. Yahya Shamikhi from Boston represents the Emad Foundation. He will tell us about how their organization helps kids who need to travel to get their medical treatments. Ms. Elnaza Naseri Tehrani from Iran represents Green Club. She will talk about how their initiative helps Tehran to become greener. Then Mr. Alireza Abrin from Iran represents Ordi Behesht. He will tell us about the work of their institute on disaster relief in a sustainable way. We have Mr. Amin Mobasher from the Bay Area who represents Sina Health. He will talk about how they're using technology to increase the quality of care for their patients. Last but not least, Mr. Amir Hossein Farzaneh from Iran represents Vivi. He will tell us about how their idea helps people to find high-quality coaches for their sport of choice. Without further ado, let me invite Mr. Shamikhi to present the great work they do at Emad Foundation.
Thanks everyone for being here today and for having us. So I would like to start with the story of Kian and his mother, Zohre. If you can move to the next slide, please. Kian was born, next slide, sorry. Kian was born with a genetic immune deficiency disorder, and he has successfully undergone a bone marrow transplant, which is a definitive cure for his disease. But before can you all hear me? Okay. Before Kian was born, his family had another son who had the exact same genetic disorder. To get care of their son, his family had to travel far from their rural hometown to Tehran. That is the main place in the country where the transplants are performed. Next slide, please. The only accommodation Kian's family could afford at that time was in temporary street shelters, similar to what you see in these pictures. Unfortunately, Kian's brother passed away after he contracted an infection after a transplant that was otherwise successful. The need for temporary accommodation is not only for the accompanying family members, but for the patients themselves. So for instance, the entire time that Kian was hospitalized for his procedure was about 1 month, but for the rest of his process, that is another 7 months, he had to stay in Tehran, although he was treated as an outpatient, because his health situation was so fragile and he had frequent clinical visits. Luckily, after Kian had his transplant, Emad House was able to host him and his mother. Emad House provided them with free sanitary accommodation close to the hospital, free transportation to go back and forth between his clinical visits, fresh and healthy food and ingredients so Kian could maintain his strict diet. And we were also able to cover all his medications and lab expenses. Next, please. In the past 3.5 years, we have hosted 225 families with an average stay of 78 nights. We covered their transportation in town or flight tickets when necessary. And more recently, we have hired a team dedicated to supplying the medications and doing the lab work so that the kids and families' exposure to crowded public environment is minimized. Next, please. Emad House currently has 2 central locations in addition to a few apartment units that we can use on a temporary basis. That is, for instance, when a family who has an apartment that they don't need for 6 months or more, they allow a mod house to use it to host the guests. Our total capacity at the moment is to serve 22 families at a time. This is hardly enough to serve a half of bone marrow transplants and just a fraction of the need if we wanted to serve families who travel for other medical issues. So how do we want to scale up? A short answer is a combination of centralized and decentralized service. So in the age of Uber and Airbnb and all other successful two-sided market platforms, it wasn't too hard to think about a distributed or matching service system, though we must be super creative and dedicated to carefully design such a system in a nonprofit setting, which deals directly with kids in extremely fragile health conditions. To put it in context, let's think about a simplified model, a two-dimensional space where our services can be placed at some point in the space based on the level of geographic and operational decentralization. Currently, our services are more or less centralized. That is, we host the families in specific locations, and most of the services are centrally administered by us. One of our development projects, though, is to create a matching platform to distribute parts of our services. So, for instance, when we are informed a child is getting discharged after their transplant, we match them with another volunteer family that shares a room in their house with them and supply their food during their stay. Some other services need a centralized operation or location by nature. For example, professional services like lab work cannot be assigned to volunteers. So we need a centrally administered team to offer those kind of services. Next, please. The further we move toward a decentralized system, the less we become dependent on financial and physical resources, and the more we get reliant on well-trained volunteers and system experts. In short terms, we still rely on financial support to expand our physical infrastructure, but to make this transition toward a more efficient and scalable system, we would also need to seek professional help from system designers, organization scientists, and nonprofit management experts to help us design every module of a decentralized service system. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Elnaz. I am a marathon runner, a cafe owner, and also the founder of Green Club, the first socially and environmentally sustainable delivery platform in Tehran. Okay, next slide. Before I explain to you how Green Club works, let me draw your attention to some interesting numbers. The population of Tehran is now close to 9 million people, and out of that number, only 30,000 people use the only city bike sharing service called Bidut. That's less than 1% of the total population. On a daily basis, there are over 4 million cars on the streets of Tehran. That's 6 times its capacity. And that does not include buses and motorcycles. Next slide, please. Now, this shows to you that Tehran is a car-friendly city, but it also inhibits using bicycles and other green alternatives of transportations. Here I have listed 3 main inhibitors for you. Let's start with the urban furniture of Tehran. Tehran has more than 34 highways. There are very few bicycle lanes in Tehran. There are no parking for the bicycles. The roads are broken. There's a lot of uphills, and let's not forget the pollution. Second is the status of the bicycle. Decades ago, a bicycle belonged to the less economically privileged class of the society. And today it's the exact opposite. It's seen as a sport, it's leisure, and it's rather an expensive sport. Nevertheless, it's not seen as a form of transportation. And last, it's the cost. Well, gas is not too expensive in Tehran, and it's not very expensive to buy a motorcycle. That's why motorcycle deliveries are very common and inexpensive and a very convenient way of delivering stuff. And it's very common and popular within the citizens of Tehran. Next, please. Now, we believe that it is a shallow thing to just adopt an idea such as Uber bike and operate that in Tehran, because to do that, we need to build a foundation and impose better regulations that favors bicycles in Tehran. And with that in mind, we adopted the tribe model strategy. In a tribe model, you have separate units working towards a specific goal while everyone benefits doing that. So in our tribe, we have the companies, we have the cyclists, and we have the recipients. Companies are always looking for an effective way to reflect a positive brand image, and as their corporate social responsibility, they want to impact the society and to adopt green alternatives, and green delivery just does that. In exchange for weekly deliveries for the companies, we receive skill training workshops and valuable discounts and gift cards. Now, another part of our tribe is the recipients, and it's actually a very important part. When the recipients encounter the cyclist, it affects the way they see the cyclist in the street. It changes the status of the cyclist in their mind, and it also help us come together as a community. Plus, it's a free service for them, so this creates more demand. And last but not least is our cyclists. The cyclists in Tehran are not seen or counted as a first-class citizens. When we use them in our weekly deliveries, they become part of a community that values them and sees them as an important asset. So they do the deliveries in exchange for skill training workshops and gift cards and discounts. Next slide, please. So because we were able to create this community and this tribe, we have attained 220 members in the last 10 months. We have had 43 weeks of successful deliveries. We have had remarkable media attention. We had the ARD channel of Germany making a 10-minute long documentary on us. And by the end of year 2022, we hope to have 2,000 members and 150 partners, and we wish to launch our application by the end of the year. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. You have my voice? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Reza Abrin. I'm representing Ordi Behesht, an NGO in Syston and Balochistan. Since 2014, we have organized community-based activities in the region, focusing mainly on slums and remote villages. We can say, please, next slide. I think we have a wrong slide. Next slide, please. No, it said they have the wrong slides. Yeah. I think you have wrong slides. Yeah. You don't have the last slide we gave you. And you responded to the slide.
So maybe if the slide is not the latest, just please go ahead with this presentation. You have
There is no point to because we prepared our presentation based on the slides, and you responded to a slide. When we send it, you approved the slide and gave us feedback. But I don't know how that would be useful. Okay, I will. Okay, so I will talk on one slide. Okay. Okay. We always support and promote community-based projects, which fall into three categories: improving the environment, securing livelihood, and improving educational opportunity. Let me briefly share with you some of our experience. We started our projects in Zahedan's slums to improve public life and the environment. We have the highest rate of births in the country. The population of Zahedan has increased 18 times in the last 40 years, and now 44% of this population live in the slums. And it is the same in all cities in Syston and Balochistan. We know our resources are not enough to cover all problems, but at least we can aim our efforts to change the status quo by encouraging communities to engage in the design and implementation of small projects to serve as examples for communities to change their environment. The second area that we have been working on is livelihood security. We planned and implemented several projects in remote villages. As an example, we designed a goodwill cycle to provide a sustainable basic income source for families who were impacted by the 2018 flood. Simply, we channeled the donation to focus on long-term investment in community instead of just focusing on the short-term and immediate relief. We bought 107 goats for 37 families and provided veterinary care and medication. Every 2 months, we controlled and checked the process. After 1 year, 20 families each donated 2 newborn goats to other in-need families in their community and completed the goodwill cycle. But in our view, our main mission is to provide educational services for kids. Based on our experiences, nothing could empower a community better than good education. We have built schools and managed campaigns to equip libraries and schools and dorms. Also, our experienced volunteers held classes like computer learning, life skill, and art. There is a misunderstanding that the internet and virtual classes have made education more accessible. Maybe it did, but not for families in the slums. They don't have smartphones or computers. And in a room where 8 people live, there is no space for learning. Moreover, by advancement in technology, very soon coding would be a basic skill for a normal life. Many kids don't have equipment, space, and mentorship to prepare themselves for future challenges. To cover this gap, we have a dream to build remote learning centers for underprivileged kids who live many in slums. We need your support, technical support, fundraising, support for equipment, and education to spread the word and help us to find supporters like you as much as possible. You will find us all over the internet and social media. Please be in touch. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Abrin, and sorry about the miscommunication. Somehow your last presentation has been missed. Sorry about that.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Amir Olakuchak, the co-founder and CEO of Synahealth. Nice to see Yahya's presentation as we are working to enable the same ideas, but in US. Next slide, please. At Synahealth, we have built a platform to push healthcare to the edge at the hands of any patient and physician, at the comfort of their home or office to provide higher quality of care for everyone. To give back control to patients and empower them, patients easily have access to all their records and physician notes in InstaHealth platform. This is what they see in their InstaHealth: clean, simple, and understandable, and they can easily and securely share any portion of their records for a second opinion or consultation. And we can utilize the health history of a family to provide AI-enabled personalized risk analysis. Next slide, please. But when we look at an individual's health, only 20% of that is actually determined by their access to healthcare and quality of that care. 30% is determined by health behavior such as diet, exercise, or substance use. 40% is determined by socioeconomic factors such as education, occupation, or income. And finally, 10% is determined by one's physical environment, such as housing, access to transportation, or healthy food. In general, these factors are called social determinants of health, or SDH. Next slide, please. Considering SDH, the question is how to improve quality of health in underserved communities. Compared with white males and females, deaths per 100,000 persons were 2 to 4 times higher in Black, American Indian, Alaskan, and Latino males and females, including deaths due to cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and Alzheimer's. Among those communities, cancer patients are more likely to worry about their standard of living and experience food insecurity compared to individuals without cancer. These patients are less likely to receive appropriate and timely cancer treatment and have poorer survival. That's why our focus is on cancer patients in underserved areas. The goal is to embed communities with their own data and enable a holistic approach to provide needed resources. We want to figure out if a patient needs chemo treatment, how can he go to the facility? Does he need to stay overnight? Does he have access to healthier food while he gets his treatment? Does he need any support or companionship? So how are we doing this? We already have the previous slide, please. We already have the patient and population health data. We extract parts of the SDH from medical records and population health that we already have. In addition, we integrate key pieces of environmental data, publicly available social economist data sets, and retail data to provide a comprehensive snapshot of areas to create community-based interventions. In addition, we form partnerships, so when we identify a patient in need, we can provide needed resources, including housing and food and other social needs, as well as social behavior interventions such as alcohol or tobacco use, which impacts the quality of care and outcome for that oncology patient. Next slide, please. We are always looking for talented people to join us. If anyone is interested in this domain, we would love to involve you. We are working with oncologists to analyze health risk factors and their SDH effects. Please let us know if you can introduce us to any oncologist or healthcare executive. And at the end, next slide, please. Currently, you can register in our website for free and early access to InstaHealth and start collecting all your medical records. I would be happy to provide more details if you are interested to help us help these communities. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Hello. Next slide. Hi. Next slide, please. Hi, I'm Amir Hossein. I'm the founder and CEO of VV Project, and here's my friend Arta, who is a board member of this project. And proudly, we are going to present this project for you. Next slide, please. First, we would like to start with the problem. Is it easy to find a suitable trainer? It's not, trust me, and we all have experienced this problem in our life. Next, please. Consider a right trainer has a significant impact on people's lifestyle and the quality of training sessions. And a suitable customer has a significant impact on trainers' business, and you should consider that trainers earn money from people who continue training sessions with them. So a proper communication between trainers and trainees makes sports centers more productive. And this is why we have called this project VV, because it brings victory for all these participants, trainers, trainees, and sports centers. Thank you very much. This is our solution for this problem. Imagine all these famous platforms combined in sports. Next, please. A location-based map of coaches, sport enthusiasts, gym, and relevant businesses. You know that it's a very fascinating community. It is very interesting, and it provokes people to check their mobiles everywhere because people would like to figure out what's going on around them. Next, please. As you know, it's impossible to find a proper coach on LinkedIn. And we have a detailed profile of trainers, coaches, and other sports professionals, including biographies, skills, achievement, degrees, certificates, and endorsements. LinkedIn is not designed for athletes. This is a professional environment for athletes. We have designed this for them, and it makes them capable to present themselves professionally and easily. Next, please. There is an interesting game here which connects trainers to trainees, recommend them to each other, and it is AI-based. And next. And something like Foursquare, we have provided a situation for businesses to take benefit from this fascinating community. Next, please. This is our business model. You know that this is a tremendously large market size, and we have implemented different kind of revenue models here. We have freemium upsell, advertising, extra chargeable services, referral marketing, and selling merchandise. Next. And this is our roadmap. We are going to launch this project in Iran, and our goal is launching this project internationally. And we have counted on your help very much. Next. As you can see, we are totally ready to launch our project. Next. We have a very successful soft launch. We had almost 5,000 subscriptions in less than 1 month, and it was promising. And as you can see, lots of significant athletes, Olympic gold medalists, world champions started to support this project. Someone like Zahra Nemati, Paralympic gold medalist, Behdad Salimi, world's strongest man, and familiar and famous Ali Karimi, and Olympic gold medalist Hamid Surian. Because of these project values. Next, please. Despite other applications, we are not here to replace human with AI. We are here to empower people, and human relations are a very important value for this project. Next. And no commissions here. Our platform is non-commission based and doesn't charge either client or trainers for introducing them to each other. Next. And employment creation, VV has a huge potential to provide job opportunities for anyone with coaching, knowledge, and sports experience. Next, please. I'm Amir Olakuchak. I've been in this business for more than 20 years, and I've played different roles here as a trainer, as a trainee, as a champion, as an entrepreneur, as a philanthropist. And here is our team, a group of experts, a group of seniors and young people who try to do their best to make this project successful. Thanks. Yeah, thank you very much. Nice to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, now we have a question and answer from Launchpad presenters. I'll go in order. I'll ask a couple questions from each of them, and then depending on the time, I will make back to the first one again. So please feel free to write your questions in the chat. So first question is for Ahmad. So the question is, how do you take into account the capacity of the targeted hospitals when you find your patients?
For the population that we are currently serving, that are mostly doing bone marrow or organ transplants, those are done in very few health facilities and hospitals in Tehran. So we have very close relationship to them. So the very starting of the idea was in consultation with those children's hospitals. And the fact that the bone marrow transplant specifically is a very expanding solution for many different disorders, including cancers or other genetic disorders. So we clearly see a much more expanded capacity of doing bone marrow transplants in the country in the future.
And how do you find the patients?
So just like I said, we are in close interaction with the hospital. So when a patient is accepted to do a transplant, that is about 1 month before they typically get discharged. So as they get closer to the time of discharge, the hospitals let us know. So we are prepared to have a new patient. And then by the time they are discharged, we have already completely prepared to have them in the house.
I see. The next question is, how can this community help?
So, as I mentioned, there are two aspects of our need that I wanted to highlight. Financial resources, of course. If you or any family members that you have in Iran have like apartment units that they don't need on a temporary basis, like at least 3 months, you can let us use those facilities. We can send you exact reports of how we've been using the other houses that have been donated to us on a temporary basis, like the usage rate and things like that, and the maintaining the quality or the maintaining the building conditions are entirely up to us. So we will guarantee that the house will be returned to you as it was on day one. But the other important need that we have is an expert team that we can rely on for designing our system and for the transition that we spoke about in our presentation toward a decentralized system and developing the matching platform.
Okay, so I assume the contact is on the slide, so people who are interested can contact Mr. Shamekhi. The second presentation, Green Club. So one question is, do you know about Bidud and its role in tribe model strategy? How can news and advertising be more effective?
Yes, I do know Bidud, but can you repeat your question one more time? Sorry.
Do you know about Bidud and its role in the tribe model strategy? And how can news and advertising be more effective?
Okay, well, Bidud is a shared city bicycle service. It's helping us in a way that it's making more people become friendlier with the use of bicycle as a form of transportation. There are right now 30,000 users of Bidud in Tehran. That's a good number. but it's only less than 1% of the population. And well, we need help with business consultation, and also we need a proper, what's it called? Give me 1 second, sorry. Yeah, insurance, sorry. We need a proper insurance for bicycles in the city. The only way that the insurance companies see the bicycle is as a sport. And if you are on the street using it as a form of transportation, chances are the insurance companies don't cover you. So the biggest challenge we're facing right now is the proper insurance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the next question is, what are the things you're doing to the challenges you mentioned that exist in Tehran in the infrastructure?
In the tribe model strategy, work towards a goal, and the goal is to impose better regulations. And by creating a demand as a community, we have a larger voice, and that's what we're doing. And because the cyclists we are working with right now are mostly athletes, they don't mind the uphills and the other stuff, and they're young. But to become a bicycle a common way of transportation, we're not going to be using athletes forever. So that's why we're creating a larger demand that will help impose better regulations.
Okay. And the last question is, why not electrical bikes? Sports aspects aside, an electric bike is faster, still environmentally clean.
Yes, electronic, well, it's good for uphills, but there are two major issues with them. I'm not against them. If I were living in an uphill area, I would purchase one, but one, they are heavy. When you run out of the battery, they're only good for like 10 kilometers, and Tehran is a big city. So if you run out of the battery, you have to pedal with a very, very heavy bicycle. That's number one. Number two, if you want to leave your bicycle somewhere and go inside, you have to take the battery with you. So these are just the two main issues with those kind of bicycles, but generally, like, we don't have a problem with that, but they are like 5 times more expensive than a regular bicycle.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The next presentation was Ordi Behesht. I'm gonna move to Sina, and we are working to upload your slides, so you can briefly talk over them. I again apologize for the mess up with the slides. So, question for Sina: who is the main customer so far that you are looking like to have?
So currently, with the partnerships that we have, we are working with 2 actually clinics. So they are in underserved areas, and we are working with them closely to identify the patients in need. And the other thing is that we are working with the insurance in those areas. So somehow provide better support for those patients. But eventually, our goal is to actually get to in the hands of any patient. And but at this point, we are working only with these clinics.
I see. The next question is, what is the metric for evaluating the usefulness of the idea? That seems to be a very interesting idea, but in order to proceed, what's the metric for evaluating the usefulness, and in what time frame?
Actually, we are working with these 2 clinics our pilot is within the next 6 months. So the goal is actually to be able to serve at least 1,000 patients within these 2 neighborhoods and connect to them and see how actually we can improve the quality of their treatments. We have already talked with a couple of non-for-profits or for-profits to enable other services. So our task here is actually to identify these patients and the needs that they have. So the rest of the help is coming from our partners. So for example, Anthem could pay for example, housing needs, We have partner for transportation, and for food we have some other non-for-profit. So that's our goal to within these 6 months to be able to help these 1,000 patients in these 2 clinics.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
So questions for VV. Do you have plan to expand your goals from sport training to other fields?
And before answering this question, we have to mention that we forgot to mention 2 of our key team members, Ms. Jafari and Ms. Zarei. And to answer your question, no, the focus is only on sports, and because we think this is a large enough market.
And then the next question is, what is your choice of marketing strategy in order to get this innovative tech to the rest of Iran and potentially to the world?
So Amir Hussein already has a very good network within the sports community. So for the beginning, we will start with the athletes. And as you saw, all the famous national athletes and champions already have supported the project. And as we move forward, we will try to build a strong community within the sports community and market, and eventually grow the market.
And what are the biggest challenges to you in terms of acquiring new users?
Actually, when we had the soft launch, the amount of traction we got was way above our expectations. But nevertheless, it's something that as we move forward, we will face the challenges. But fortunately, the soft launch we had, there was no issue when it came to acquiring users.
Okay. Thank you very much. So before asking questions about Ordi Behesht, let's present their correct slides and hear them talk over it in the right format that they wanted.
Hello, everyone. Again, sorry, you have to tolerate me for 5 minutes. Actually, I insisted to show you this slide, and especially this photo of Yusuf in Totan, to show you that actually this photo portrays the way we live and the way we work. And like Yusuf, we are wrongfully hopeful for the future. We always support and promote community-based projects, which fall in 3 categories: improving their environment, securing a livelihood, and improving educational opportunity. And I will share with you some of the experience we had. Next slide, please. Okay, we started our projects in Zahedan slums to improve public life and the environment. We have the highest rate of births in the country. The population of Zahedan has increased 18 times in the last 40 years, and now 44% of this population live in slums. And it is the same. We know our resources are not enough to cover all problems, but at least we can aim our efforts to change the status quo by encouraging communities to engage in the design and implementation of a small project to serve as examples for communities to change their environment. Next slide, please. The second area we have been working on is livelihood security. We planned and implemented several projects in remote villages. As an example, we designed a goodwill cycle that you see on the slide to provide a sustainable basic income resource for families who were impacted by the 2018 flood. Simply, we channeled the donations to focus on long-term investment in the community instead of just focusing on the short-term and immediate relief. We bought 107 goats for 35 families and provided veterinary care and medication. Every 2 months, we controlled and checked the process. After 1 year, 20 families each donated 2 newborn goats to other in-need families in their community and completed the goodwill cycle. Next, please. But in our view, our main mission is to provide educational services for kids. Based on our experiences, nothing could empower a community better than good education. We have built schools and managed campaigns to equip libraries and schools and dorms. Also, our experienced volunteers held classes like computer learning, life skills, and arts. There is a misunderstanding that the internet has and virtual classes have made education more accessible. Maybe it did, but not for families in slums. They don't have smartphones or computers. And in a room where 8 people live, there is no space for learning. Moreover, by the advancement in the technology, very soon coding would be a basic skill for a normal life. Many kids don't have equipment, space, and mentorship to prepare themselves for future challenges. Next slide, please. We have a dream to cover this gap. We have a dream to build remote learning centers for underprivileged kids who live mainly in slums. We need your support, technical support, fundraising support for equipment and education to spread the word and help us to find supporters like you as much as possible. Next slide, please. So we need your help and your support. You will find us all over internet and social media. Please be in touch. We will be happy to have you in our team. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the great presentation. So we have questions for you. What are the main challenges of working in Syston and Balochistan?
There is no challenges. We live in challenges. So living in the remote areas are full of challenges. The lack of education, lack of infrastructure, basic infrastructure. The first picture you saw, the Yusuf in Totan, is a simple example. This challenge, it portrays all of the challenges, the way life is here full of challenges. But for as an NGO, the scale of the problem is a challenge. We don't know. We want to cover and solve problems, but the problem is vast majority of all the area. So we pick some of the problem to solve and mostly select them to be as example for communities. But as I said, lack of education and always for NGOs, monetary and fundraising is a big problem. So like all over the world.
Yeah, I understand. And it's really amazing that all the work that you're doing. So what are the age ranges of the kids that you're educating?
Mostly they are started from the school age, 7 till the high school, mid of high school, till 15, 16. Most of them is categories because we can't control their life. Many of them will go for works, especially for girls. It's a big challenge, because the low age marriage is a problem here, and that's but we want to keep as much as possible kids in our program.
And the last question is, how can this community help you?
I said we have some current projects like a school in Totan for girls we are building. because of the inflation, we lost a part of our funds. Actually, we have funds to build the school, but these 6 months made everything hard for us to finish the school. We are at the end of the process. That's the current project we have. But for long-term project that we presented, the remote learning centers, that's our dream, because always we are behind the problems. Always, we in these 7-8 years we try to reach, but we always are behind the problems. This idea is like a solution for us to solve problem that now is not a big problem, but would be big problem 7-8 years later. So before that, we need technical support and fundraising, especially if we start remote learning centers. The technology would connect all of us for learning, for teaching the kids, and for equipment and technicals would be big challenges for us. But now that's the big dream. We are dreamers. The small project we saw, that the GOATS project we say here, Good Cycle, it was a dream for us. It was very small, but it was a dream. But we look all of this solving each problem is a dream for us.
Yes, I understand. And it's good that it's sustainable. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the presenters. And we have a voting process, and my friend Reza will talk about it after me.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, depending on where in the world you are. We're so happy to be with you today. My friend Shahab, as a moderator for the chat, will start the voting process. You should receive a poll, and please choose your option carefully, and we're going to be back in a second with the results. All right, I see the votes are coming in. We're going to give a couple more minutes, or maybe a minute. It's very tough to choose, like all good presentations. Very, very good initiatives. As I'm seeing the results, it's very, very tight. So if you have not voted, please do. We're going to give the voting a few more seconds, but I can go over some introduction as the votes are coming in, and we're going to close the polls right before I announce the winner. My name is Reza Takopui, and I'm a board member of the Iranian Stanford Alumni Association. I'm very delighted to listen to these wonderful Launchpad presentations. And like you, I enjoyed learning about these exciting initiatives. I hope that you're as inspired as I am by these great presentations. And it was hard to choose 5 presentations for this competition among the applications that we received. And I'm sure it's hard to choose a winner. As far as the competitions and polls go, I see that the votes are in. So I ask my moderator friend to close the polls so that we can announce the winners. So for the second place, we're gonna have two top winners. For the second place, we have Ordi Behesht. I congratulate them for their amazing presentation. And for the top winner, we have VV. VV has won the competition. We're gonna be in touch with both of these great teams about a prize. And we wish all the Launchpad participants good luck in their future endeavors. We had an amazing conversation today earlier about the critical topic of sustainability. We followed the meeting by learning about this exciting initiatives, all of which are adding tremendous value to the world. And due to obvious reasons, we're not able to hold this symposium in person, but that meant that we could have more participation from different geographical locations in the world, which is a great thing. I would like to take a moment thanking everyone who was involved in making this event happen. It's impossible to list everyone, but I'd like to mention ISA and its partner, Iranian Studies Program at Stanford, Persian Student Association at Stanford, Iranian Students of California, and many more. Special thanks to our guests, Niyusha and Amir, as well as the Launchpad participants. But more importantly, the main thanks goes to you, the audience, for your participation and for bringing your energy today. This concludes the second part of the ISPS today. Next and the last section is networking from the comfort of your couches. We have made 7 breakout rooms so that we can spend some time together and get to know each other more closely and have follow-up conversations. Each of these 7 rooms has a theme or topic, as you can see on the slide, if my friend is sharing the slide, as well as a general room that we can stay to hang out and talk about general stuff. There will be 1 breakout room for each of the panel speakers and Launchpad presenters, where you can ask more questions and continue to network and converse further. Please feel free to hop in and out of these rooms and don't feel obligated to stay one room. It's okay and encouraged to check out a few different rooms. And please note that this is going to be the last part of the event, so we're not going to reconvene after that in the main room. Once again, thank you very much for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the breakout rooms.
So just a quick explainer, because I notice some people are still, a majority of the people are still unassigned. You can choose the breakout room option from the bottom of your screen now that they're open, and it'll show you a list of all the rooms, similar to the ones that you see in the slides, and you can just choose to join each one. Let me know if you face any difficulties, and I can add you directly to them, or I can try to help you. Thank you. So hi everyone, I can see there's still 24 people in the room, in the main general room. You can feel free to go to any of the breakout rooms if you're interested in the topics. If not, you're free to talk here. I've enabled unmuting for everyone in this room as well. So feel free to have any general conversation if you're interested. Feel free to ask any questions. If you're facing any issues, please feel free to let me know. And other than that, I hope you enjoyed the event and that you continue to enjoy it. Thank you.
Before we give it to Reza, I want to say that I know maybe some of the conversations were cut in the middle. I encourage the speaker of the room and also the person who asked a question, get connect over the chat. I want to make sure the last bit of conversation is complete. With that, I will give it to Reza to close the ceremony for us.
Well, I said most of the stuff that I wanted to say earlier. I want to thank you all once again for being here. This was a great couple hours to spend together and learn about this important topic of sustainability and hear about this great initiatives in the network after. I want to thank everyone again. I'm not gonna go through the list again because I did once. But thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of the day wherever in the world you are. See you guys next year.
Thank you. Bye.